like that. But then there was something that he couldn't control. That he couldn't control what came into his head. He acted upon it. And it could happen to any one of us. It could happen to any one of us if we decide to just let the thoughts in our head have a free day, that sort of thing. Let it, if you let that thought come into your head and you start dwelling on it, because acting on it, a thought can't just come into your head one time and you act on it. It's impossible. You have to allow it to sort of fester or brew. So it comes into your head the first time you think, right, this isn't right. And then but if you allow it, if you don't kick it out of your head, you allow it to be there, what it will now do is it will start getting comfortable. Start getting comfortable and then start influencing your actions, making you act on your actions. And I'll give you an example. Say, for instance, when I was younger, I used to I'd look at a girl and I'll think, well, you know what? She's very nice. Go and talk to her. Go and talk to her. And that thought comes into my head. It says, you know what? She'll probably say yes. There's another thought that says she'll probably not not say yes. She'll probably say no, or she'll tell you she needs time to think about it or whatever. But then if you let that thought, fester in your head, what happens? You then go and talk to this girl, and then she says, well, no, I do have a boyfriend. And you think, I shouldn't have. I should have listened to the other voice in my head telling me not to. So it all depends on where we allow, how far we allow that thought to stay in our head or in our minds, on our minds. So that's the dangerous part of thoughts.
Mm.
We can't control thoughts coming into our heads. That's impossible. But we can control how long we let that thought stay in our head and then influence our actions. That's the thing. Yeah, so that's what I believe
Yeah, I
about.
mean,
No, go on.
yeah, I get what you're saying there. And the other thing is, what about those thoughts that we don't want, which seem to come from nowhere? Can we just release them? Can we just say, oh, that's gone? And we probably consciously think bad thoughts have gone. If we get bad thoughts, which I guess everybody does sometimes, negative or whatever. But in fact, the protest, as I am not protest, the process, as I understand it, is that a thought we discard. Like you might discard an email you're halfway through and it's not working, so you discard it and it's gone. Well, we can discard thoughts like that to an extent, but in fact, the thinking is from neurologists, neuroscientists, that actually those thoughts stay in the subconscious, which is again another brilliant part of the brain. So that, and they may not be bad thoughts even, they just may be thoughts you don't want, you discard them. You're thinking about, should I pay for that expensive holiday, or should I just make it a cheaper one? The thought has come into your mind and you say, no, I can't afford it. And you push it away and you think, oh, good, that's gone. It's not going to tempt me anymore. But in fact, it stays there. Any thought about anything stays in our subconscious, ready to be triggered by something, either another thought or something we see. Very often, a powerful trigger is the scent of somebody, the sense of smell is they think the most powerful trigger, taking us back to a previous situation, even childhood, something we smell. And I think actually, in saying that, I can remember my primary school. We used to make things for our mums at Christmas, and one thing was we would have a jar. We'd make a jar of bath salts, and I remember it being a lavender flavour. And I think I've never forgotten. I mean, I do like the smell of lavender. It's a calming thing you can have if you have it in a candle or something. And it's even to this day, I guess, well, not literally today, but the smell of lavender somehow takes me back a long time, into my childhood. So those thoughts we think we've discarded, they are there, ready to be retrieved. And if we talk about the word retrieve, we think of our computers, all the data a computer will absorb and have in its storage. And when we need that, we can put a search in Google and lots of things will come up, including hopefully the thing we want to find. And it's a bit like I do as a little hobby or something to do sometimes, if I've got nothing else to do, I would do a few crosswords. I've always loved doing crosswords from over the years. And sometimes obviously, you get a clue and you think, well, what's that? And the incredible thing is sometimes, not every time, but sometimes the answer comes. I don't know whether you find this if you do crosswords, but you think, how do I know that? And I thought of one the other day, actually. I can't remember what it was. It might have been something about a type of deer.
Right.
Certainly it said, was it a small deer or something? Now, maybe. How do I know that? And I thought of one the other day, actually. I can't remember what it was. It might have been something about a type of deer.
Right.
Certainly it said, was it a small deer or something? Now, maybe there's lots of people who might be listening to this who say, well, I would have got that easily. But I didn't. You get, um, I think there's a song, Doe a deer, a female deer. I think it's from The Sound of Music, but a doe or other types of deer. But it was a specific type. I can't remember the clue, but I thought it's roebuck. And then I thought to myself, roebuck. I don't even know what that means. But in fact, eventually, when I finished the crossword, I looked up the answer, and it was roebuck. So I think sometimes we store information. We store millions of bits, possibly billions would be billions of bits of information that come to us every day. And our brains are such a fantastic computer, the most incredible one in the universe, literally, that it can retrieve a bit of information from billions of bits of information, and which we often thought we didn't even know in the first place. So that's something that probably a lot of people would have experienced. That sometimes we are able to retrieve something. How often do we say, "Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue," and sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. We're trying to remember a song from years ago or whatever. But this ability of us to retrieve information from the brain is quite remarkable because there are billions of pieces of information, and every day we must take in thousands of millions, if not billions, of pieces of information, all of which will be stored in some way to make a future thought or something like that. So the other aspect of this, of course, is AI, isn't it? Artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Because people think, oh well, it's much better than us, our brains. Actually, it doesn't compete with the human brain, not yet. Anyway, it may do in times to come, but it can predict cancer. It can do a lot of good things, but it's all based on prediction. And they do that because it analyzes that they're so fast, the computers that do this, it analyzes millions of pieces of information such that they can then make a prediction based on, well, the likely outcome of this will be that. And that's really what AI is, as I understand it. I'm not an expert on it, far from it. But that's what I understand it. It predicts. It's a bit like a poll of people before a general election. I don't know about you, but in all the polls you ever hear about anything, I think I've never ever been polled. I feel like, what is it, FOMO, fear of missing out. I've never been polled by anybody, I don't think. But if they get a statistically relevant sample, which for an election tends to be, I think, 1,500, 2,000 people, they're fairly confident that's a relevant sample. And very often, and we know they tend to be pretty accurate. Not always, but they tend to be pretty accurate. And AI is kind of a version of that. It takes millions, billions of pieces of information, crunches them together and comes up with a prediction. Like if it's to do with stocks and shares, it will recommend go for that one because on the basis of this, there's millions of other bits that's likely to succeed, and very often it does. But it doesn't compete as yet with the human brain because the brain operates on prediction, on patterns that we see without even realizing it. So that the brain predicts what will happen in so many circumstances way below the conscious level, at the subconscious level. So it's incredible. And as yet, the brain is still the master when it comes to something like AI.
Yes.
But yeah, it's human intelligence again. It is a weird sort of thing because there's a spectrum of it, isn't there? And as I say, they have Einstein's brain, probably the most intelligent man perhaps who ever lived, and compared to most people or whatever, and you get a spectrum, and it's not really clear except maybe genetics play a part in the level of somebody's intelligence level. It's not easy to measure intelligence because I think there's four lots: is IQ, which is intelligence quotient. There's EQ, emotional quotient. So there is an emotional intelligence, isn't there? People say, oh, he's got no emotional intelligence. Then you've got there's two others. One is adversity quotient, which I guess is to do with um, things perhaps going wrong, how we might deal with that kind of thing. And there's one other which slips my mind. But there are measures. I mean, measures of Mensa, for example, measures IQ, and there's another that people can join Mensa if they are sufficiently intelligent to be 1 in 50, top 1 in 50 of the population, or the top 2%. But there's another one, but I can't remember the name. I should have looked this up, which actually looks at people and admits people who are something like 1 in 10,000. It's something like that. And only they can join, if they want to, that particular high-end intelligence level. So intelligence is again a whole new ball game. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're probably coming towards the end of our but I will leave you with one thought,
Right.
Emmy, and anyone listening.
Right.
We react to patterns. Now, this is actually, if I can show it, it's an examination thing. And it
Right.
starts off by saying, final examination, read questions carefully, answer all questions, time limit 4 hours. But this you will find your brain will tell you this does not fit into a predictable pattern. I'll give you one question.
Okay.
Philosophy. Question 13. Sketch the development of human thought. Estimate its significance. Compare with the developments of any other kind of thought. Now, if you think that's a serious question, then listen to this one. 2,500 riot-crazed Aborigines are storming the classroom. Calm them. You may use any ancient language except Latin or Greek. And so it goes on. Physics. Explain the nature of matter. You see, these things, our thought says, this isn't a pattern. I don't get this. And what it does, it generates humor because it goes right outside. It's actually a wonderful thing, this thing. It's so many incredible questions, but it generates another kind of positivity. And that's when we laugh with the best kind of positivity there is. So there we are. That's my thinking on thinking and on intelligence.
You know, I really enjoyed it. It's just the way you analyze it. So this is all we got time for. You've been watching and listening to the Alien Spaceship with myself, Emmy Hikins, and he calls me bruv.
Me, Trevor Gear, and he calls me Cuz.
It's goodbye from me.